A histogram is a type of bar graph that is used to visually represent quantitative data. So this is data that involves numerical values. So often they get mixed up with bar graphs, but one of the key things that makes them different is the fact that when we look at them, notice that the bars are touching, okay? So each bar is directly next to the bar, you know, there's no gaps. Basically what it does is it takes that frequency table and looks at how many numbers fall within certain ranges. It gives you a good overview of general trends within data when you're not sort of caught up on specific individual values. So we're going to build a histogram. There's one right here, but we're going to actually build one from scratch and sort of talk about the different sort of terms that go with it just to sort of practice. Now, when you're doing one, so we're going to be looking at presidents' ages at inauguration. And so if I go and I'm going to pull up, here are all the presidents and their ages at inauguration. A good thing to sort of, before you begin one, is always look at what is the sort of highest value. So in this case, that's 78. And then what is the lowest value? And in this case, 42. So I want to go basically from 42 all the way up to 78. Now, if I look at my sort of table here, I want to do this, and let's say I want to make 6 bins. So we're going to try and create what are 6 sort of, we call them bins. So we want to divide this group up into 6 sort of different groups. So my first step is always to figure out how many years am I going from. So I'm starting at, I have 78 to 42. And so if I subtract those numbers, I get 36 years. And so if I want to divide 36 into 6 equal groups, that would get me 6 years per group. And so step 1 is to sort of always figure out the bin size if you're not given it. And so that's like the determine the width of the bins. So when I go through and then do that, I would start here at 42. And 42 then goes up 6 years to 48. Now, that upper boundary is going to be included on this lower bin. So I'm going to use brackets here to represent it. But when I talk about starting at the next bin, I actually start at 48. But it's like I'm including everything above 48 without actually including 48. And then I'm going up 6 more to 52. And that 52 is included on this group. 52 down here is not included, but everything older than 52 is. Then I'm going to add 6 to that to get to 50. Oops. That's supposed to be, I misadded. It happens. It shouldn't be 52. That should be 54. Sorry about that. So 54. So 54 goes up to 60. 60 to 66, 66 to 72, and then 72 up to 78. And then our total, which I didn't give myself enough room for. There is a total of 46 presidents, so I know how many my total should be. Now, if I go through and count, now this list is conveniently listed by years. I see one, I want to go up through including 48. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So these first 7 go into my first category, and then I can keep sort of going up. I'm going up through 54. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And if I kept counting this way, I could fill in the rest of my table. Now, just like in my previous video, I did this in advance. so that I knew the values. All right, so we're pretty much done with that list of data. So I'm going to close that out and I can sort of zoom back in on my frequency table. Now, for the sake of practice, I don't need the relative frequency or the cumulative relative frequency to build my histogram, but I'm going to just sort of show you practice finding it again, just so you can make sure you understand what you're doing. So that 7 divided by 46 would get us 15.2%. And I keep going, 32.6%, 28.3%. And we can keep sort of, sometimes I like seeing that relative frequency because in some ways, seeing it as a percent makes it a little easier to visualize what's happening. And then remember, cumulative relative frequency would be as I add my percents up. So that start with the 15.2, but then I add 32.6 to that, and I would get 47.8%. And then I add 28 to that one, and I get 76.1%. So notice 3/4 of our past presidents are 60 or younger. And then I would add 15.2 to that number and get 91.3%. And then 97.8%. And then it should be about at your total. All right, so we have our percentages. Now our next step is to actually create our histogram. Just like with our bar graph, we need to set up the graph. So we're going to create our axes and we're going to label them just like we did on our previous one. So we have a line, go back to our black. So I'm going to take the bottom here and I need to split it up into my bins. They should be equally width. And how you should structure that depends a lot on so I have 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets, 4, 5, and I'm sort of running out of room, so I'm going to extend out my line. Different people will label it different ways. I personally like to go this way, where I'd say this is 42, and then this line represents 48. So everything between there is sort of the set between, and then 54, 60, 66. Now we also want to make sure we label the vertical axis, and that vertical axis we're going to label with the frequency numbers. So we need to get up to 15. You can count by ones or you can count by higher. This time I'm going to count by ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. All right, don't forget to go back and actually label what each of these numbers represent. So here we have frequency. And then down below, we have ages of presidents. All right, last but not least, let's build our bars. So this time the bars need to be the whole width of the bin. So when I do that 7, I'm actually going to go from end to end. So my bar goes end to end. And then 15. And so sometimes I like to do the 2 sides and then I'll connect the top. 13, 11, 12, 13. Oops. 7 again. 3, and then 1, and I need to move my, and that would be my histogram. But it is missing something. Just like with our bar graph, we want to make sure we have a title, and I would just pull it straight from what the data is called. So we could say presidents, ages at inauguration. And ta-da, there is my histogram.